Hi everybody, this is lecture for topic 6, ACT2131. Okay, this topic is about standard cost. Okay, first, you have to know what is a standard cost. Standard cost is a predetermined cost. It is set by a business. For example, you have a business, let's say you have a cupcake business. Standard cost means the cost that you set when you want to produce the cupcake. You know that there are three types of costs to produce something. Direct material, direct labor and overhead. So a standard cost means the cost that you set for the direct material cost, for the direct labor and for the overhead for your product, for the cupcake that you produce. So when you make a standard cost for your product, you will use a document that is called standard cost card. For every product, you have one standard cost card. So let's see here. A standard cost card, this is an example of a standard cost card for a product. So in this standard cost card, the business that produced this product has said how much is the cost that they want to spend for direct material, how much is the cost they want to spend for direct labor cost, and also how much they want to spend for the overhead. So in this example, the cost is like $12 for material, $35 for labor, and $7.50 for the overhead. So let's say you have a cupcake business, so spend $1.50 for the direct material, and $1 for the labor, and 50 cents for the overhead. So the total standard cost for your product is $3. You want to sell the cupcake at, so the total standard cost for your product is $3. You want to sell the cupcake at $4.50, for example. So standard cost means the cost that you set for your product. Okay, and then the standard cost is recorded in a document called standard cost card. For every product, you will have one standard cost card. Okay, back to this one. So standard cost is a predetermined cost, the cost that you set for your product, like your cupcake that I have mentioned earlier. And overhead requirements. When you when you prepare the standard cost, or when you make a standard cost for your product, then you can use this standard cost to plan for the labor. When you have the standard cost, let's say in the next month you want to produce 5,000 cupcakes, so you can plan. One cupcake is $1 labor, standard cost for labor. If you want to produce 5,000 cupcakes, then you have to plan for $5,000 cost of labor, and then you can plan how many labors you want to use, or you want to have. And also you can plan for the material, and also you can plan for the overhead. And then standard cost can be used as a benchmark for measuring performance. Okay, so standard cost is the cost that you set for your product. Like for the cupcake, my example is one cupcake, the total standard cost is $3. So how can you use that standard cost to measure performance? At the end of one accounting period or one accounting month, you can compare the actual cost and the standard cost. Let's say the standard is $3 cost per cupcake, but when you actually produce the cupcake, you found that the cost to produce that cupcake, at the cost of lower than the standard. But if let's say the standard is $3, but when you actually produce the cupcake, you spend $3.50 cost. for every unit of cupcake, then the performance is not good because the cost that you actually pay to produce the cake is higher than the standard. So that's how standard cost is can be used as a benchmark to measure performance. And also, standard cost can be used to simplify the accounting system. One of the way that we can do or use standard cost is to use the standard cost to calculate the value of inventory. Calculation to know the value of your inventory. So standard cost can be used to calculate the value of the inventory. There are many methods that can be used to calculate the value of inventory. Standard cost is one of the way that you can use to calculate the value of the inventory. Okay, this is the thing that to know the value of your inventory. So standard cost can be used to calculate the value of the inventory. There are many methods that can be used to calculate the value of inventory. Standard cost is one of the way that you can use to calculate the value of the inventory. Okay, this is the thing that I have shown you earlier. When you set a standard cost for your product, you use a document called standard cost card. In this document, you have to show the detail about the standard cost, the material cost, the labor cost, and the overhead cost. Okay, this is another thing that that also has been mentioned in the previous slide. So I told you standard cost is something like the cost that you set for your product, and you set the cost for three types of production cost. Standard cost for direct material, standard cost for labor, and standard cost for overhead. Manage their business. So one of the way is they use this standard cost. So most of the time they focus on the unfavorable items in the or unfavorable cost. So here you can see there are three types of costs. Management, they focus on quantities and costs that exceed standard. So when the actual cost is higher than the standard, we call it unfavorable. So this way of managing a business is called management by exception. If you are a manager, you are very busy. So you can focus on, if you use the management by exception method of management, you focus on the unfavorable cost only. So this is called management by exception. So it saves your time. You don't have to do everything, but you focus on the unfavorable cost or item only. Okay, so like cost only. So this is called management by exception. So it saves your time. You don't have to do everything, but you focus on the unfavorable cost or item only. Okay, so like I have told you that standard cost is a cost that you set for your product. So if you have a small business, then the person who is responsible to make the standard cost is you. Let's say you have a small cupcake business, you run the business at home or in a small shop. So the person who is responsible to make the standard cost is you, the owner of the business, or the owner of the business. But if for a big business, like a big company like Petronas or what else, Lenovo or anything, big manufacturers, their product is very complex. So accountants, engineers, administrators, and production managers combine efforts to set standard based on experience and expectation. When the product is complex, people have to involve in the process of making the product cost. Okay, so when a business practical standard cost or practical standard, or they can make ideal practical standard cost or practical standard, or they can make ideal standard. Okay, practical standards should be set at a level that are currently attainable with reasonable and efficient effort. So practical standard means the standard cost that the business make is the amount that can be achieved by the workers if they work hard for it. If they are lazy, then they will perform below the standard. Okay, that is practical standard. Practical standard means a standard that can be achieved by the workers if they are working hard. But ideal standards or ideal standard cost is based on perfection and unattainable and discourage most employees. Okay, ideal standards is a standard that is based on perfection. Let's say you have a cupcake business. When you want to make the cupcake, if in the recipe you need 1 kilogram of flour, in actual situation, you have to use more than that, isn't it? Because some of the flour will spill from the table, or there are normal wastages. When you set a standard, if you set a practical standard, then you will add the normal wastages. But if you set an ideal standard, then you will not consider any wastage, or you will base it on perfection. So if you have a business, making an ideal standard is not a very good idea, because it will discourage your workers to work to do their work, in doing their work, because they know no matter how hard they are working, they cannot beat the standard, because the standard is a perfection, based on perfection. If you set a practical standard, then it is good, because your workers know if they work hard and efficiently, they can beat the standard. If they are lazy, then they will perform below the standard. Okay, so the thing here is there are two choices when you want to set a standard: practical standard or ideal standard. Then practical standard allows or encourage your workers to work hard. Ideal standard discourage your workers to work hard in the production process. So if there is a question asked you which one is better, practical standard or ideal standard, the general answer is practical standard is better because it encourages the workers to work hard. Okay, when you set standard cost for your product, like you have seen in the second or the third slide. In the third slide, I have shown you have seen that when you set a standard for your product, you set the standard cost for the direct material, direct labor, and overhead. Okay. So when you set the direct material standard, there are two elements related to the direct material standard. First, you have to set the price standard. how much is the price that you want to set for the direct material that you will use in the production process. And also you have to set the quantity standard, how much how many material you want to use for the production process. For example, for one cupcake, you want to use the quantity, maybe I don't know, maybe 5 gram of flour. Okay, so that is the quantity standard, and the price that you set is you set that the price for 1 kilogram of flour that you want to use for the production process is RM2.50, for example. So there are two elements in the material standard: the price of the material and the quantity of the material. For sugar, maybe for sugar you want to use, for one cupcake the sugar is 20 gram, and then the price is 1 kilogram sugar RM2, for example. So for every direct material standard, you have to set two elements: the price standard for the material and the quantity standard for the material. Okay, when you set the standard for direct labor, you have also to think about two elements: rate standards and time standard. Okay, rate standards is how many dollar you want to pay for the worker. Maybe $5 per hour, $6 per hour, $7 per hour. So that is the thing that you have to determine. And then the second thing, the time standard, means how many hour you want the worker to spend on one unit of product. So if you have a cupcake business, maybe you want the worker in 1 hour, one worker has to produce, let's say, 50 cupcakes. So if for one labor, 1 hour 50 cupcakes, then it is like, for one cupcake the labor hour is like less than 2 minutes. Okay, and the every material overhead standard. So material overhead standard, okay, there are two elements also related to the material overhead. Sorry, there are two elements related to the overhead standard. Okay, remember about something about overhead is, in accounting you cannot overhead is an indirect cost. You cannot calculate the overhead cost directly. So remember, when you learn about the overhead, when you want to calculate overhead for one product, you have to use predetermined overhead rate. So when you set standard for overhead, so you have to there are two elements related. First, the standard, the rate standard, how much overhead how much is the rate of the overhead. And then activity standard. So this activity standard means the allocation base, how many labor hours or how many machine hours related to the production process. And the allocation base that you use to allocate the overhead to the product. Okay, we will see the number after this, so you can follow the way to set the variable overhead standard. Okay, this is the standard cost card. When you set a standard cost for your product, you have the typical practice is you will record the standard cost in a standard cost card, in a document called standard cost card. In this document, you will have to show the cost related to the item. So see here, in this example, the direct material cost for this product, the standard in terms of quantity is 3 pounds. And standard dollar in terms of dollar, the standard in terms of dollar is $4 per pound. So if you have a cupcake, the standard quantity for your direct material, first direct material is the flour. So the flour is 50 gram. Standard price for the flour is $2.50 per kilogram for the flour. So the total is how much? And then you have second material, sugar, 20 gram. And then the standard price is $2 per kilogram. So you will get the standard cost. And you have direct material 3. For example, the direct material 3 may be the butter, and the cream, and the dried fruits, etc. So if you have 5 materials, then you have to show 5 materials. And then you have direct labor. And then you have to show the variable standard cost for the variable manufacturing overhead. Then you will get this total standard unit cost. Okay, standard cost is calculated based on per unit. Okay, per unit. Okay, now, so you see here, we have discussed about the standard cost. When you, if you can remember, previous topic is a topic related to budget. When you learn about budget, you also learn about how to estimate cost for product. So what is the difference between standards and budget? Budgets are estimates that you have to pay. Budgets are estimates that you have